I've worked for the city of Durban, eThekwini municipality for 14 years. My portfolio is climate change and biodiversity management. So what I'm bringing to you today is our journey of climate change action, the two case studies that I'm going to be summarizing for you. It's not just one case study. I thought I must share just a little bit um, from the mitigation side of things and from the adaptation side of things. And adaptation is more of my specialty because it's very close to my other function in the city, which is biodiversity, because our adaptation is more linked to ecosystem-based adaptation. So I start you with just briefly the journey that we have taken as eThekwini um, with our climate change response. We started in 2004, well, before cities actually took up this challenge, especially cities of the global south, where we started our municipal climate protection program. And at that point, we were working with the line departments responsible for engineering services, where we were developing municipal adaptation plans with them. And we managed through that process to embed ourselves into the institution around 2007. That is the adaptation side, followed by the mitigation side that was more influenced by the start of the load shedding in 2008, the establishment of the energy office that was supposed to come up with a response that will ensure that the city is not badly affected by load shedding. So as we speak now, we have a citywide climate change strategy that received adoption by council in 2015. We have a governance structure that is overseeing the implementation of the strategy at a citywide level. The structure has a political oversight committee as well as a technical task team that oversees the coordination and the implementation of the actions in our climate action plan. And in 2019, Durban was the first city in Africa to complete and then adopt a Paris Agreement compliant climate action plan. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because that climate action plan was actually based on the strategy itself, but it went on to details in terms of the intent that was communicated by the strategy. It then detailed actions that will take us there. But just to put everybody in the picture, what before we could actually commit ourselves to, those commitments that we are going to be net zero by this time, and by this time we needed to understand how vulnerable we are, what opportunities are there, and then we started with the research on the evidence that we needed that will then inform the commitments that we are making. So as you can see, just briefly, from the electricity side, we saw that it was possible for us to commit 50% of to reduce 50% of emissions by a certain period and 100% by 2050. So this is just the route that we followed. So I'm just illustrating here that that climate action plan was an evidence-based scenario planning. It was an outcome of a process that had a lot of evidence behind it. So just briefly, in terms of mitigation, those are the targets that we committed ourselves to by 2030 and 2050. if you can take note of in the electricity, under the electricity theme, where we're saying by 2030, we are going to be relying on 40% renewable energy in Durban. And by 2050, our electricity in Durban is going to be coming, 100% of electricity in Durban is going to be coming from renewable sources. I am flagging that because one of my case studies that I'm going to share with you is going to focus on energy transition that is taking us to meeting the commitment that we made in the climate action plan. On the climate change adaptation side, again, I'm going to focus on the ecological infrastructure, where we are now focusing on bulking up the ecological infrastructure to protect the hard infrastructure that is on the ground. And at the time when we were doing this work of the climate action plan, we were busy with a 300 kilometer stretch of rivers. And our medium term target was the one that said 3,600 kilometers of rivers. We wanted it to be climate resilient, clean, safe, and healthy, with the long-term target of the entire 7,400 kilometer stretch of rivers in eThekwini being climate resilient and healthy. So now straight to the two case studies. Energy transition and ecosystem-based adaptation. I'm going to start you off with this sobering picture right here. So these are the latest stats from our electricity revenue. You will see from October, it's a comparison from October 2017 to October 2021. You will see that we have been gradually losing in terms of sales, and which means we're losing customers, and we're also losing electricity to theft and other things. Well, I'm not going to go into deep details in terms of the reasons why we're losing, but the point that I'm trying to make is the one that says we are not getting enough revenue, as much revenue as we were getting before from electricity sales. Yet from the national, from Eskom, we are not getting any rebates. Electricity is becoming more and more expensive. Or maybe just to put everybody in the picture, what is so important about the electricity revenue line item is that with this line item, with the savings that we make, we are able then to get capital expenditure to build other things within the city and subsidize other things. And I know that there is money that comes from us collecting rates as a municipality, but that is not enough. And this electricity was mostly accountable for about 2 billion rand of revenue for the city, which is actually a lot. And now with these losses that you see, the picture is very bad. And I'm beginning now to speculate, well, not necessarily speculate. This is what I know and understand. So when we were busy with the public participation or stakeholder engagement with our energy transition policy, this is the picture that began to emerge. As you can see, big business is tired of Eskom and the endless load shedding. And because now DMRE allowed self-production beyond 1 megawatt, and now this is what you see. So it means that the municipality is going to be left with poor customers like myself, and that is not going to be enough. So even if there was no climate change or need to reduce emissions, we would still have to go through an alternative form of encouraging, unbundling and a diverse mix of energy sources, not necessarily relying on the national electricity provider. So now, the energy transition policy, it was adopted in July this year. This is the snapshot of where it takes us. As you can see, just purely on the electricity side of things, it is taking us there, 100% reduction in emissions by 2050, which is what we committed to in our race to zero. And the transportation sector is very tricky because transport is not a municipal function. It is more of a provincial and a national function in South Africa. It's very little that we can do on our side. But as part of this energy transition, what becomes possible now is that we make it possible to have battery-powered cars and so on and so on. And that then feeds onto the transport sector, as well as in the industrial sector as well. So our energy transition policy has already started bearing fruit in terms of taking us where we want to be in terms of the commitment that we have made at a global level. Now, I'm going to talk about the challenges at the end of the presentation. Now I'm going straight to my second case study. This one is talking to mitigation. So quickly, what we had was that program that we started of cleaning rivers, basically trying to protect our streams or the infrastructure, basically the culverts from being clogged by alien vegetation, rubbish, and so on and so forth. Because we were reporting that we were spending about 200 million a year in the maintenance of stormwater infrastructure. But when we started this intervention, we saw that it is costing us 20 million a year to do it this way. So we're talking about avoided costs of, infrastructure maintenance. And that's where the idea of upscaling came from. I think Dr. Jeremy spoke to this kind of business case, and I wanted to share it, that it's something that we've actually pursued. But right now, as the things stand, you can't even get that conversation into the mix of things that are happening at a local government level. So that is just a picture that shows you what the streams looked like before they were cleaned. And this is what they look like after being cleaned. You can see there's a whole lot of core benefits because there are many people that are living alongside these streams. I mean, dirty streams are not just a problem to the infrastructure, even though we are using as a business case the protection of stormwater infrastructure. We are gaining a lot of benefits in terms of protecting people from vector-borne diseases and a whole lot more, because if you then go there and interview people that live there, they can't even open their windows and get fresh air. And Durban is very hot. Not everybody can afford an aircon. And if you encourage everybody to use an aircon, then you are wasting electricity and so on and so forth. So this has been one of the programs that has been very close to my heart. That's another showcase of what a stream in a location in Durban can actually look like with the investment in ecological infrastructure. So why a business case? So we wanted to develop an evidence-based rationale for upscaling this way of doing things across all rivers of eThekwini, because I know we're known as Durban as debt bin, And the rivers, that 7,000-kilometer network of rivers that is supposed to be a benefit to us has become a nightmare because they are not being well looked after. So we're trying to change that picture. And if this actually works, you can imagine that Durban will be the most livable place in South Africa. So we started this work and estimated the cost of climate change impacts to rivers. As you can see, those are the numbers that we came up with using the benefit cost approach. The resultant being that each year we are losing 375 million rand. By 2040, that's what we will have lost each year, which is really big for a municipality that is not having a lot of money as we speak. So the case for upscaling this way of doing things on municipal land, we ended up after running the program that was developed, that for 1 rand that you spend cleaning these rivers, you gain 2.60 in municipal and societal benefits, including coastal. And well, there are other benefits, as you can see there. And the total being 92 million annual municipal cost, and the output being 177 million rand in societal benefits each year. And so I said municipal land, I'm talking about rivers that run through land that is owned by municipality, because in South Africa, land ownership is a very complicated thing. So you've got rivers that run through land that is owned by private individuals, and land that runs through and rivers that runs through land that belongs to traditional authorities, which is very difficult. So we ran this scenario under different kinds of land ownership, and we got different figures, but the theme was the same, that there was a clear picture was emerging that there is merit. And this is actually the best way of dealing with these inherent societal issues in a city like ours, where we have socio-economic problems and environmental issues. If you have a response like this that deals with them all at one go, then you win. So what is the problem? Why don't we just go ahead and do it, especially if there's money out there? This looks like something lucrative. It looks like anyone that borrows us money, they will get their money back. It's not that easy. So I have stated some of the challenges that I think are actually facing us at the moment. So to start off with, financing of new energy generation infrastructure. So if as a municipality with our energy transition policy, we were to say, okay, fine, we're moving away from Eskom, we're going to generate ourselves. There's no money. Where do we begin? There's no spare cash for that capital expenditure. So what we have done, we opened up an opportunity for independent power producers, and we got an overwhelming response. But the fear out there by the leadership, political leadership, is that something like electricity, you can't hand that over to the private sector. You can't. One day they will hold you to ransom. But how do you deal with it? If there are no investors, where will you get the startup capital as a municipality to then do, put in place your own energy generation infrastructure? So maybe it goes back to what Helen was talking about, all those options that she was talking about. I think those would work well for the energy generation infrastructure, because the payback is clear, and unlike on the adaptation side of things. And now the capacity. The municipality has been around for a very long time, and the people that are employed in the energy, in the electricity space, don't necessarily have this expertise. So people will have to be capacitated, or maybe new skills will have to be acquired, but doesn't look like there's anyone who has time to think about that at the moment. And in terms of, now this transformative riverine management program, how do you institutionalize something like that? Where is it going to sit? Dr. Jeremy said something like, a climate change response, you don't have to call it a climate change response. Like in this case, it's not a climate change response. It's something that is linked to avoidance of damage to infrastructure. But there are many players that are involved. The municipality is structured in a way that encourages silos. So how do you begin to then embed this in the different departments and say, you must budget for it and you must budget for it? That is where we are actually stuck. That's why I'm saying I don't even know where to begin going out there asking for money. Even though I have a great business case here, what's going to happen to that money? I mean, nobody is going to want to use it. And now, mainstreaming, similarly to institutionalization. So I leave, my colleague Zama, who is here, she leaves, and everybody that I've been working with on this project, they leave. Where does it sit? Big problem there. And then last but not least, training of practitioners and decision makers. In both these case studies, this is new knowledge. New knowledge is required for people to understand the gravity of their decision making. And there's just no time. Right now, you can't train anyone, especially during a time where the ruling party almost lost the metro. So this is the space that we are in. But I want to emphasize one thing, that as eThekwini, we are still pushing and we're doing our best to ensure that we still lead in the climate change, on the climate change side of things. But the challenges remain, and we will appreciate any input that we can get. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chumisa. That was very informative. It was really, I mean, from my perspective, this was really an eye-opener. And I thought the work that went into making this business case, the evaluations, the analysis, the gathering of evidence, how did that happen? I think some might be listening and thinking this sounds great, but how does one do this? Is there an academy, or is there? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, so this one is actually people. You need people. The business case itself was developed by people. The benefit cost approach, I think the equation that was used by the consultant that we got, well, this work was funded by C40 Cities Finance Facility. I forgot to mention that, but they are there in many of the slides. So what do they need? All the information is sitting with the people that actually know the work. The questions to be asked are developed with the people. Questions like, okay, what kind of service are you talking about? Should we include this as an ecosystem service that we gain from this from this kind of a river? So if this ecosystem service is no longer there, who will suffer? How far will the impacts go? And it is a collaborative approach. All stakeholders will be represented, and the number that will come out on the other side is the number that will have been agreed to by everyone. So it was a very involved process. And yeah, when we started doing it and we were in the middle of all these questions, I was not sure where we were going, but the picture that emerged at the end of the day, yeah, it did make sense.
Okay. I want to make sure also that we get any of questions from the hands that are up. And again, just Christoph, I don't see the little hands, the hands going up icon. So do you see something there?
Not yet, but everybody is invited. I mean, I have a question which is perhaps more directed to Jeremy. I don't know if you are still in the background and listening. So I'm wondering, perhaps it's a stupid question. I'm wondering if you are talking about Eskom and you said they will increase the prices for 30% to, let's say, to finance the decarbonization. Why can't there be any loans given to Eskom to avoid that increase of the prices and to invest that in decarbonization measures?
I think he may, like Helen, I think he may also have had to step out a bit. I think he'll be back at 4:30 or so.
Perhaps I will prompt that question again later.
Message him.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm just giving a chance to see if anybody wants to ask something.
Perhaps one more question, which was already tackled partly by Jeremy also. You had this, let's call riots or whatever it was in early this year, and that really damaged a lot of the infrastructure, and now is a lot of money needed to rehabilitate that and to restructure that. How is that affecting your work directly?
Well, the work of everybody in the city has been greatly affected because I think soon after the riots, everything that was planned for had budget approved. Our budgets were cut 30%. So you had to then rethink and reprioritize what we're going to deliver this financial year. And for as long as the finances still stay the way they are, then it means that our projects from my side, which are mostly projects that are employing people in rural communities to do like alien clearing work, plant trees, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the projects was installation of solar PV in one of Metropolis headquarters. We got budget cuts, so now you have to wait midterm adjustment if somebody is gonna declare any savings. Otherwise, yeah, you just, everything is just a mess, and we don't know when the picture is going, the situation is going to change. And we plan for next financial year, but we don't know whether we're gonna get the budget or not.
There was a hand up from Sama, so you have the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm actually a colleague for Chumisa, but I work at the strategic office as a chief policy analyst. I've been intimately involved in the work of climate change and supporting with the work of the C40. Having left, the climate change department, in the strategic office, we have even, gone into further exploring with the World Bank, trying to establish in terms of how can the cities, invest in terms of climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. And what is coming across is that even though we see an opportunity from the private sector to come in and join with us, and we've got the numbers showing in terms of how much we could be saving and how much they could be saving as well if they do invest in some of these projects. We are not really getting that traction in getting them to really say that they are putting their money in Durban, because what we are finding is that there's a need for us to maintain our infrastructure. We need to provide budget for our infrastructure so that we can have this database in terms of this is our municipal infrastructure and this is how we maintain the infrastructure. Because that very same database, that information that we have, it shows us in terms of how we're maintaining the infrastructure, meaning that there is some work that we're doing to reduce the risk by the way we are maintaining our infrastructure, including using ecological infrastructure to maintain our systems. But in terms of having them to be really convinced, to get a buy-in to say that the green is the new investment when you want to maintain or ensure your infrastructure, it's something which is still new, something we can even see in cities like big cities like Dubai, where they try to introduce like the electric cars, but because it's something which is new, they don't know the risk, they really don't understand the risk, for them to have some sort of a trust in the new green environment to say that they can invest in us. Of course, if we say we've got the numbers and we show the numbers, say that if you give me the money to maintain my system, as much as I have some sort of an account that I want to allocate budget for, to say that if I put in 20% and you put in 80% in this budget and we maintain this infrastructure, obviously the claims for the citizens and the businesses around eThekwini will be reduced. But still, you're not getting any traction. Instead, we are being penalized as the cities, like we were penalized for COVID, for just reporting our COVID, that we are showing that there are risks and the risks are higher. But instead of the insurance embracing the work that we are doing, they are using the work and against us in terms of costing the cities, meaning that now and again we find it that it is very expensive to ensure infrastructure within the city of eThekwini, such that the World Bank, when they did the study and compared us to the city of Cape Town, who were participating in the study, they found out that in terms of the insurance premiums, we are paying twice the amount that the city of Cape Town is paying. And yet, when you look at the work that we are doing to say that we want to know what is our status quo and we want to invest in that status quo, somehow, some way, it creates that mistrust or a high, it makes us as a high risk city to invest in, although the picture and the numbers are clear that if you come into supporting us, at the end of the day, you will be saving somewhere as the insurance, where you see there will be less, clients claiming on your insurances, but we're still not getting any traction. Even within the city, the heads of units for each infrastructure that they are responsible for, they need to budget for maintenance. But because the resources are so thin, there's so much less money that is going to maintenance of infrastructure. And most of the money is allocated towards the new infrastructure. And then what happens is that the old infrastructure is not maintained as the way it's supposed to be maintained. It gets more and more degraded, such that even when you do the claim from the insurance, they say, yeah, it is insured for 10 million, but we can only pay you 3 million for your claim because your maintenance was poor. So it's just becoming a horrible cycle that we are struggling with, in terms of coming together and having that trust to say that with climate change, the waste management people cannot solve it on their own. The maintenance a sector where it's like the engineering sector for the infrastructure, where it's like stormwater drainage system, they can do so much maintenance as they can. But without us complementing each other, providing each other the services that will provide us a holistic, treatment into the root causes, it's a struggle for us, such that people even within the municipality don't understand this new style of working, which is transversal management, where probably we seeing as the climate change probably fraternity, we are tending to dictate in terms of what other line functions should do. And there isn't that understanding that there needs to be transversal management where we are all servicing each other. And some of those projects need multi-sectoral approach to have a greater impact. And yet we also equally need to provide the budget for those projects. And when it comes to financing and budgeting for such projects, it's a bit tricky, because usually each and every cluster will go to their principals, whether it's political principals or the executives, to go and request for budget. But for projects such as Chumisa's project that she was presenting, it requires multi-sectors to come in together and say that for this project to be successful, this is how we are supposed to move in together. But the question, where does it sit? Who is superior than who? And who's going to make sure that all the sectors are working together to ensure that this project is a success? And obviously, there will always be those power struggles, like everybody wants to have their own authority and their own budget and their own money, and they want to report in that particular way, where I think that's when then we are talking about transversal management, to say that it is a new way of working. But because of the long history of working in silos, it's going to be very hard for us. And unfortunately, we are also running out of time. When you look at the IPCC reports and you look at the outcomes for the COP26, it's so discouraging. And you just look at it as if, what are we going to do? And for us in the city of Durban, the unrest, the COVID just made everything so it's sort of like it has undone all the work that we have done as the climate change fraternity to convince the importance and how climate change is not only about the issues of environment, but it's mostly the socio-economic functioning of our cities. But all of the things that have happened through COVID and the civil unrest, all that sense has been thrown out of the window, and everybody has gone back to their own silo mentality where they want to save their little baskets. And this thing of having that additional climate proof in the project has been thrown out of the window. So it's one of those challenges that we are battling with. We know what we wanted to do. The plans were ready. The plans were well accepted, but somehow, some way, at the current moment, we are at the brink of a breaking point where it's not absolutely easy to convince and to regain that momentum that we have as the climate change fraternity. Like I'm saying, everybody is trying to save their own baskets of eggs that has been lost via COVID or our civil unrest. I don't know, maybe there's a lot I can say, but yeah, that is our story.
I mean, it was very impressive what you described here in detail, how it works on the local, regional level and all the challenges you are facing. I mean, we are coming very close to our planned and scheduled panel discussion. I have perhaps one very brief question to Chumisa at the end. You talked a lot also about that we have to change the mindset of people and particularly also in the administration. In that context, does it help that there is a program like the Cities Race to Zero, which has some, let's say, some very positive character or so, or some somehow it's inspiring character as well? Does that help?
Christoph, what has helped in the past? I think we've been lucky in that our two previous mayors have been very involved at C40 level as deputy chairs for the C40 leadership group. And that transformed their thinking in a big way, that they became advocates themselves of climate action. And that is the knowledge that they brought into leading the executive. And I must say that is something that made us succeed in the past to get to where we got to with our climate change strategy, as well as becoming the first city in Africa to adopt a climate action plan. I have no doubt even now that Mayor Kaunda, who has been re-elected as mayor this year, we still have a climate change champion. So in short, having partnerships like that, becoming part of a global movement like that, it helps a great deal, because our city, well, it's a city in Africa. I mean, Zulu people are very hospitable people. If there is I think Carol and all the Bremen people know this. So if someone coming from outside is telling them something, even if they've heard it from me before, it will be like it's new, and they will receive it better. So I think, the partnerships that we have formed and the networks with the global community, and our leadership seeing other leaders in the African continent, in the global leaders, city leaders leading from the front, has encouraged them a great deal. They came back and did it here. But those are not the only leaders we're concerned about. So now we've got the technocrats, the ones that are problematic, that then want to, hold things closer to them, to say, okay, this is my space, I don't want to share, and all that. But I don't know how far we would have how much we would have achieved without the partnerships that we have been part of. Like you have seen both the energy transition policy and the transformative riverine management program. Those are products of C40, and they've been embraced by city leadership in a big way. And I believe that it is that partnership that actually made leadership stand up and pay attention, knowing that it's not only them that will be doing it. It's knowing that cities around the globe are rallying around the same issue. I hope I've managed to answer your question.
Yes, thank you. That was actually, it was a good answer to the question.